hasn't said I'm live. Yes, I'm live, I think. I still see a circle spinning and spinning and spinning, but never mind, we'll get there in the end. This is a very slow spinning circle today, bear with me. Good morning, it's Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are well. I'll just try and move this a bit. I'm sitting in my chair because I have two desks here and they're both covered in crap. One's covered in contracts and budgets and the other one's covered in books and journals and other things I've collected in the last 2 weeks that I need to sort out. These wonderful reef-tastic cards that my friend Margie O'Hara made, helping save the reef. So I need to find new places. My friend Carol's book, A Sober Lifestyle, can't wait to interview her about that soon. My friend Hayley Gollard is life designer, which I shared in my live in my interview last week, and numerous other things have piled up. So it's funny because I think I have everything under control and then nothing feels under control. But this morning I've literally mopped myself into my office, so I can't leave my office until the floors are dry. So I thought that was a way to kind of clean the floors and then focus on work. So that's what I've done. Backwards mopped into the office. So I hope you are well where you are. I can't believe it's nearly the end of June. If you've read my book, you'll know that step 6, which is June, sorry, I'm going to sneeze, I think, is all about joy. So this month, despite some challenges that we've had, I've had joy as my true north. So whenever things have been out of kilter, out of whack, challenging, sad or painful or infuriating or frustrating, I've reminded myself to come back to joy as quickly as possible and to find the joy even in the chaos, which is why I wrote an article for Kittypedia called Flip-Flopping from Joy to Chaos and Back Again, and it's been truly apt for me this month. So if you had a chance to read that, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And it kind of brings me on to what I wanted to chat about today, which is connections and connectivity. Because a lot of what I've been doing with the interviews at the Wellness School is reaching out to people around the world and connecting on various health and well-being topics on a wide variety of angles and showcasing their work so people can reach out to them directly, form connections, and to have new experiences and to learn new and helpful content. And that for me is important because it helps build social engagement. And I had a few real live examples in the last week specifically where connectivity, connection and social engagement has been immensely powerful. In lots of ways really. So I volunteer with Queensland Youth Services. I'm on the board, and we were chatting last week about declining numbers of volunteers at kind of like organisations that have been fundamental and pillars of communities such as Rotary and all of these ones that we know do raffles and run markets and things. And as volunteer numbers around the country continue to decline, organisations are having to rethink how they engage members and how they do events and how they encourage the younger generation to become volunteers in those organisations. So we had some interesting chats about that. And I'm also a volunteer for Mentally Healthy City Townsville, and on Saturday I was at an event with them in my role as ambassador for Mentally Healthy City Townsville, and we were engaging with the community and handing out information and just generally chatting and having a presence. And a few different things happened. Firstly, a couple of people approached me independently and wanted to have a chat. And it was very obvious that they were suffering with anxiety and feeling very lonely and disconnected and unloved in lots of cases. And that was sad, obviously. And so we had a nice chat, and in some cases I gave them moral support and encouragement and a hug, and gave them some ideas and tips and information of things and resources that they can reach out to. And that was really nice because the impact of just having those few moments of connection and then receiving that moral support and that knowing that someone was listening and caring about them, you could see they were lifted as a result of that. So the impact was immediate. And also on that day I was volunteering with a person who's on the board of Beyond Blue, and we were talking generally about healthcare and health and well-being and preventative healthcare, preventative wellness, lifestyle, about how connectivity, community, and the village atmosphere is very good for maintaining wellness in a community. We chatted a lot about that, and we also talked about, teaching kids to grow their own food and to figure out where things come from. Now we know that anxiety in young people is increasing. We also know that life is speeding up, and what I feel and notice a lot is that parents are busy on their hamster wheel churning at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and kids are busy on their little hamster wheels churning at 1,000,000,000 miles an hour, and we're all focused on what's in front of us. So the opportunity to create connectivity and connections outside of our immediate circle, or our immediate screen even, becomes very difficult, because we're not learning those skills to put that down and to seek connection. And one thing that I've tried to do for myself is to find connections in my community and to develop and foster positive social engagement that is just for me. So when I go running and walking around my neighborhood, I don't wear earphones, because every person that I come in contact with, whether I walk past them, run past them, cycle past them, is an opportunity for a human interaction. So I value human interactions with strangers as well as with people I know. And an awesome example of this was what I shared on my impromptu live yesterday, when I was in a coffee shop working on a presentation, and there was a man who, something about him sparked my internal compass. And when I went over to speak to him, and I got introduced to his wife, it turns out that his wife is a famous author, this lady called Barbara Hannay, and this book, The Sister's Gift, was set on Magnetic Island, and she lives here in Townsville. So in the space of 3 seconds, I've built and fostered a great connection with someone, and we ended up having an amazing chat. And I said to her, "What are you working on now?" And she told me her next book is about connectivity and connections and forming connections with strangers in a garden. And I was like, that's so cool, because that's what we were chatting about on the weekend, and it was really lovely. So I can't wait for her next book, which is coming out in August. So if you haven't read The Sister's Gift, do so. It's a great postcard for Magnetic Island, and I'm sure this next book will also be equally awesome. But that was just little ways that seeking or reaching connections, getting away from my screen, getting out of my phone, wanting to connect with people in person. You can foster that positive social engagement through volunteering, through putting down your phone and looking for connectivity, and through just really thinking about how do I improve my well-being through positive social engagement and connections. And on Sunday I was asked to be a guest speaker at an event for World Refugee Day. Pardon me. And in going to this event, I only knew one person, which was the organizer of the event. And we'd met previously, so we kind of discussed generally what I would share and talk about. So when I sat down, or when I was in the venue prior to doing my talk, obviously I didn't know anyone and no one knew me. And I was trying to kind of get conversation going with people, but it was hard work, to be honest, But after I had done my talk, people felt very connected to me, because I shared, some stories and things, and then so many people were willing to come over and chat with me and to share their story and stories of connection and stories of immigration and traveling and all sorts of amazing things. So by the beginning of the day, when I had no connection other than with one person, at the end of the day I felt like I had connections with people who come from all over the world and who were wanting to share their stories with me, because I had shared my story with them. So that was really awesome. So I left that event with a whole room full of new, friends, really. So I loved that very much. But, at that event, we weren't necessarily talking about superficial stuff. We weren't engaging in superficial content. And I think that's where some of us get trapped a little bit, is that we're all about the superficial side of life. We'd want to have loads and loads of followers, but we're not engaging in meaningful engagement with a smaller number of people right in front of us. So it becomes a balance then to give of ourselves wholeheartedly to people who are near us versus giving to a little bit to many, 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 many people and not actually creating an impact. And it strikes me that whilst the volunteer sector is declining, what's inclining is social enterprises. So generally the reason people set up social enterprises is they become disillusioned with big businesses who are not giving back to communities. Social enterprises are about creating an impact in a community and using the structure of a business model, but in a very different way. So they're not quite charity third sector, they're not quite private sector enterprise, they're somewhere in between, but it's impact driven business. And those businesses are increasing. So the younger generation, 35 and below, are very focused on social enterprise and impact giving and impact doing, but they're not necessarily seeking out volunteer opportunities with older mainstream organizations. So therein lies a bit of a dichotomy to how we can create the best of both worlds. We don't want organizations like Rotary that have done so much good in Australia in X many years to be declining, but it's like, how do we kind of keep those things alive? It's an interesting question. So Grandparents' Day is coming, which is our school tomorrow, so that kind of made me think a lot about how we create and foster connections between our children and our grandparents. And sadly, my daughter lost one of her grandparents in the last few weeks. My father-in-law passed away, so that's been quite hard, obviously, for my husband and for her and for his family and for our family. And my grandma passed away last year, so I've been thinking about, okay, well, it's not just about the grandparents keeping the connection going, it's about the parents helping the children keep the connections going, because you can't expect the children to understand about connections, and it's not necessarily always the grandparents that have to compromise and do the connecting. So there kind of needs to be the middleman. So I feel I'm the middleman for maintaining the connectivity, for building the connectivity, and for ensuring that there's what I would call the transfusion of information on both sides. So what was it like for them, what's it like for them, and how can we build that bridge between the younger and older generations. So that is quite important and something to think about. And I was thinking a lot about how when we become quite self-obsessed, it's easy to get depressed. And I was thinking to myself, does self-obsession lead to depression? So I decided to Google that. Does self-obsession lead to depression? ? And here's what I have found. It's a vicious cycle, because the anxiety that drives negative, self-centered rumination causes more anxiety. Depressed people experience compulsive, negative self-rumination that worsen and perpetuate depression. Self-centeredness may even contribute to more health problems and a shortened lifespan. That's very interesting, isn't it? And that's by a quote from Dr. Michael Gee. And I think that's really important again, because when we go outside of ourselves to seek that connectivity, to volunteer, to seek positive social engagement, we become less self-obsessed. We start to think more about others, and World Refugee Day is a great example of that, when we get to think about other people. The reason refugees become refugees is because people are harming people, and that's sickening and sad. So why do we need to keep harming people? It's because we're self-obsessed, or we're not thinking about others in the way that we should. So I would just like to leave you with that note today. We want to sometimes break our cycle of depression or break our cycle of anxiety, we need to break our cycle of just being focused on ourselves and to focus on others, which is what connection and connectivity is all about. So I'm sending you lots of love, and I'm hoping you're having a great June and you're focused on joy, and I'll see you again real soon. Take care. Bye.